My apologies.
Rachel Zegler had it all: an industry breakthrough, a Disney princess role, and a promising career ahead of her. But somehow, instead of riding the wave of success, she managed to turn Hollywood's golden ticket into a PR nightmare. Let's rewind to 2021. Ziegler was just 17 when she landed the lead role of Maria in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. She had no major acting credits, but her audition tape, a simple home recording of her belting out "I Feel Pretty," impressed Spielberg so much that he gave her the part over thousands of other hopefuls. When the film premiered in 2021, critics praised her performance, and she even won a Golden Globe for Best Actress. It seemed like Hollywood had found its next big star. Disney certainly thought so. In 2021, they announced that Rachel would play the title role in their live-action remake of Snow White. On paper, it was a dream come true. She was young, talented, and fresh off a Spielberg-backed success. But the dream quickly turned into a disaster. Instead of embracing the opportunity to become an iconic Disney princess, Rachel spent years trashing the original Snow White story. In interviews, she dismissed the 1937 classic as outdated, mocked the prince as a weird guy who stalks Snow White, and proudly announced that her version of the character wouldn't be focused on romance. That might have been fine, except that Snow White is literally a fairy tale about love and magic. Fans weren't amused. By the time Snow White hit theaters in 2025, Rachel had alienated the original film's fans, fueled online outrage, and become a symbol of Hollywood's worst excesses of woke storytelling. The movie bombed at the box office, and suddenly, Rachel's once bright career looked shaky. So how did one actress go from being Hollywood's rising star to one of its most controversial figures? Let's break it down. From the moment Disney announced Rachel Zegler as Snow White, controversy erupted. Snow White, as originally envisioned in the 1937 animated classic, was famously described as having skin as white as snow. Rachel, who is of Colombian and Polish descent, didn't fit that description, and fans weren't shy about voicing their concerns. Rather than addressing the backlash with grace, Rachel doubled down. Instead of reassuring audiences that she was dedicated to honoring the beloved character, she brushed off criticism and called detractors ridiculous. When asked about the controversy, she made it clear she wasn't interested in playing the Snow White people remembered. She wanted to redefine her entirely. That didn't sit well with fans who grew up loving Disney's first-ever princess. And it wasn't just about race. Disney's decision to replace the iconic Seven Dwarfs with a group of diverse CGI-enhanced magical creatures sparked even more outrage. Game of Thrones star Peter Dinklage publicly criticized the studio for what he saw as hypocrisy, claiming they were trying to be progressive while still relying on outdated stereotypes. Meanwhile, actors with dwarfism were angry for a different reason. Disney's decision cost them potential roles in a major blockbuster. The controversy wasn't just limited to fan complaints. There were financial consequences too. Unlike past Disney live-action remakes, which generated excitement upon announcement, Snow White faced backlash at every turn. The negative buzz impacted merchandise sales, pre-release hype, and even ticket pre-sales. And then came the biggest problem of all, Rachel Zegler herself. Instead of trying to calm the storm, she kept fanning the flames with her controversial statements. If there's one thing that can sink a movie faster than bad casting, it's bad press. And Rachel Zegler, she gave Disney a masterclass in how to alienate an audience. Instead of hyping up Snow White as a magical, nostalgic remake, Rachel went on a press tour that sounded more like a roast of the original film. In multiple interviews, she trashed the classic 1937 movie, calling it weird and outdated. She dismissed the love story as irrelevant, scoffed at the idea of a prince rescuing Snow White, and declared that this version of the character would be all about female empowerment. Now let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with updating old stories, but when you're promoting a remake, it's probably not a great idea to insult the original. Fans who loved Disney's Snow White felt like Rachel wasn't honoring the character. They felt like she was mocking her. It didn't help that Rachel's attitude came across as entitled and dismissive. In one particularly infamous clip, she joked about how she was only excited to play Snow White because it was a paycheck. She also rolled her eyes when discussing how long she had to spend in costume fittings. Her words didn't just anger nostalgic Disney fans. They also rubbed industry insiders the wrong way. Hollywood is built on legacy, and trashing a beloved classic isn't a great way to win over powerful executives, producers, or longtime Disney fans who grew up with the original. And then, of course, there was the political angle. If Rachel Ziegler's controversial interviews weren't bad enough, her social media presence turned Snow White into a full-blown culture war. Over the years, She had been vocal about her political beliefs, often using Twitter and Instagram to comment on social issues. While having opinions isn't a crime, her approach often came across as arrogant and condescending. She alienated potential audiences by dismissing critics as misogynists and racists, implying that anyone who disliked her casting or her take on Snow White was driven by bigotry. Things got even worse when her past tweets resurfaced, including posts where she criticized Disney before ever working for them. These old comments, paired with her new remarks trashing Snow White, made it seem like she never truly respected the company that gave her a career. But the real explosion came when Snow White got caught up in global politics. During the Israel-Palestine conflict, Ziegler took a strong pro-Palestinian stance, while her co-star Gal Gadot, an Israeli actress, publicly supported Israel. This clash led to intense backlash, with some groups boycotting the film over Zegler's stance, while others were furious at Disney for employing both actresses with such opposing views. Things got so heated that Disney reportedly scaled back the Snow White premiere, fearing that protests or further controversy would overshadow the film itself. At this point, Snow White was no longer just a movie. It had become a battleground for political debates, cultural clashes, and Hollywood's growing divide between traditional audiences and woke reimaginings. For all the controversy surrounding Snow White, there was still a chance that the movie could recover if audiences showed up. But when the film finally hit theaters in March 2025, the numbers spoke for themselves. Snow White was a massive box office flop. Opening weekend brought in just $32 million domestically, a weak start for a Disney remake with a reported budget of over $250 million. Even worldwide, the numbers were disastrous, with the film barely scraping together $87.3 million in its first week. By comparison, Beauty and the Beast, 2017, crossed $1.2 billion, and The Lion King 2019 made over $1.6 billion globally. Even The Little Mermaid 2023, which also faced backlash, earned over $560 million. Snow White, on the other hand, was shaping up to be one of Disney's biggest financial failures. So what went wrong? Simple. Audiences just didn't care. The backlash against Rachel Zegler, the casting controversies, and the drastic changes to the story alienated Disney's core audience. Families, who usually drive ticket sales for Disney remakes, stayed home. Fans of the original film were uninterested in a version that seemed to mock its roots. And even the younger, more progressive audience Disney was targeting didn't show up in big enough numbers to save the film. Critics weren't much help either. The film landed a dismal 43% on Rotten Tomatoes, with many reviews calling it uninspired, preachy, and a hollow attempt at modernizing a classic. Even the visual effects, which Disney had hyped up, were panned for being lifeless and overly reliant on CGI. At this point, the damage was done. Not only was Snow White a failure, but Rachel Zegler, once seen as a promising young actress, was now associated with one of Disney's biggest disasters. So what does this mean for her future? After the Snow White disaster, the biggest question was, can Rachel Zegler bounce back? Hollywood is known for second chances, but Zegler's situation is different. Unlike other actors who've weathered controversies, she isn't just dealing with one bad movie, she's dealing with a damaged public image. For starters, she's now seen as box office poison. Studios rely on stars to sell tickets, and Zegler's name is now tied to one of Disney's biggest failures. Even before Snow White, her other big-budget film, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, underperformed. While she wasn't the main reason for its failure, it didn't help her reputation. Then there's her PR problem. Ziegler's biggest misstep wasn't just the things she said, it was her attitude. She came across as ungrateful, dismissive of the fan base, and unwilling to handle criticism professionally. Hollywood executives and casting directors pay attention to these things. If an actor is seen as too much trouble, they stop getting big roles. Her future projects also don't look promising. But if that underperforms, or if she continues alienating audiences, it could be the final nail in her career's coffin. Of course, Rachel could turn things around. If she plays her cards right, choosing better roles, staying off social media, and working on her public image, she might recover. But right now, she's in a tough spot. In the end, Rachel Zegler had everything: talent, major roles, and Hollywood's backing. But instead of embracing her success, she pushed away audiences, alienated fans, and turned a dream opportunity into a PR nightmare. Now she's facing the consequences. The question is, can she fix the mess she made, or has Hollywood already moved on? Do let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you like the video, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more similar videos.